figures we have is that there are 95 people inside, of them 17 below the age of 10.
I know where I came from. I come from God. I didn't come from monkey. I came from God through Adam through a long lineage of man. Did Jesus look like the Son of God? No one thought so, except a few people in his day.
David Koresh was a monster. He was a highly unstable, self-proclaimed Messiah.
The Branch Davidians were founded by Ben Roden in 1959 as an offshoot to the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Church, which has been established by Victor Houteff several decades earlier. Houteff's group eventually moved to a farm some 10 miles east of Waco, Texas, but by 1962, Roden and his followers had taken possession of the settlement, which is now known as Mount Carmel. There, the Branch Davidians lived a simple life, preparing for the imminent return of Jesus. However, in the mid-1980s, the group became embroiled in a power struggle, and by the end of the decade, Vernon Howell, later called David Koresh, had become the head of the Mount Carmel community.
Been born Vernon Howell.
His mother was very young when he was born, 15.
He had a very troublesome childhood. His mother had been married 3 times. He wasn't particularly the best student in school. He had some learning disabilities.
He was very cute, lovable little boy, very inquisitive.
Dave spent most of his early years with his grandparents, and Koresh attended the Seventh-day Adventist Church. In his senior year, Koresh dropped out of Garland High School to take a carpentry job. While in his early 20s, he spent a short time in Los Angeles trying to make it as a rock star. He rejoined the Seventh-day Adventist after returning to Texas, but was kicked out after butting heads with the church leader. In 1990, Vernon legally changed his name from Howell to Koresh after the Persian king and became the Branch Davidians' leader. Koresh's teaching included the practice of spiritual wives, which enabled him to bed God-chosen female followers of all ages. Koresh fathered at least a dozen children with the members other than his legal wife. He soon began taking spiritual wives, several women who were reportedly as young as 11 years old. Allegations of child abuse and Koresh's launch of a retail gun business attracted the attentions of legal authorities. Koresh was allegedly involved in multiple incidents of child abuse and sexual abuse. Those claims were never proven, however. Koresh's doctrine of the House of David did lead to marriages with both married and single women in the group, reportedly with at least one being under the age of 13. The underage girl was Michelle Jones, the younger sister of Koresh's legal wife Rachel, and the daughter of lifelong Branch Davidians Perry and Mary Bell Jones. Koresh allegedly had sex with Michelle when she was 13, evidently with the consent of the Joneses. Regarding the claims of child abuse, the evidence is less sure. In one reported incident, ex-members claimed that Koresh became irritated with the cries of his son Cyrus and spanked the child severely for several minutes on 3 consecutive visits to the child's bedroom. On the second report, a man involved with the custody battle visited Mount Carmel Center and claimed to have seen the beating of a young boy with a stick. A 6-month investigation of child abuse by the Texas Child Protection Services in 1992 failed to turn up any evidence, possibly because the Branch Davidians concealed the spiritual marriages of Koresh to Michelle Jones, assigning a surrogate husband, most likely David Thibodeau, to the girl for the sake of appearances. As the leader of the Branch Davidians, Koresh claimed he had cracked the code of the 7 seals in the Book of Revelation, which predicted events leading to the apocalypse. He told his followers that the Lord willed the Davidians to build an army of God. As a result, they started stockpiling weapons.
It's what people did. It was a good time. People would have barbecues and shoot on the prairie.
Get more potatoes. I know you like it. I'll fight you for it.
God and guns is exactly what sums up Waco, Texas.
I have firearms. Everybody has firearms. Texas has open carry and concealed carry. Okay, and I'm never going to pull my weapon unless someone pulls one on me. Just to go around and brandishing weapons, that ain't happening. That wasn't Mount Carmel either. Those people weren't that way.
Every once in a while, we would get a report that there was gunfire out there.
David Koresh preached from the very beginning that he wanted to militarize his followers. and he started going to gun shows and purchasing huge amounts of weaponry, ammunition.
He thought that the end of all time, the end of the world would come in a great battle between the faithful and the beast of Babylon, who he specifically identified as the government of the United States.
One of the reasons that the Branch Davidians started to get investigated by the ATF was because one day a delivery man for UPS delivered a box of grenades to David Koresh, and the box broke open.
And out of the box fell some of these hollowed out grenades. The people at Mount Carmel were buying all sorts of gun supplies, including kits to convert AR-15s to automatic fire.
Under federal law, it was illegal to convert guns into fully automatic weapons. But for the Davidians, the guns served a higher purpose.
When the sheriff's office received this information, we shared it with ATF, you start wondering about what is this all about? And you start thinking about the automatic gunfire reports that you'd had a year or two earlier.
The U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, obtained the arrest warrant for Koresh and a search warrant for the compound of Mount Carmel.
Worried about the amount of guns the cult are accumulating, the ATF decided to raid the compound.
There was a news crew from a local television station that had learned of the impending search warrant. In their quest to get a breaking story, they got lost.
There was a mailman who saw members of the media and asked what was going on.
The postman turned out to be a Davidian.
He immediately went back and advised David Koresh that the ATF was on their way.
One of the biggest mistakes I made was not just stopping there and saying, look, we can't go. We've lost the element of surprise. We got to call this raid off.
They got to a point of no return. David Koresh knows you're coming. This is going to be a bloodbath.
Our hostage rescue team shows up with the backing of 10,000 FBI agents and everything that comes with that, and all of our laboratory, all of our resources. And I could, whatever I needed there, I knew I could get.
The FBI sends its elite tactical specialists, the Hostage Rescue Team, known as the HRT. By instinct and training, they are inclined toward action.
On February 28, 1993, more than 70 ATF agents raided the complex. Gunfire soon erupted, although it was uncertain who fired first, and during the 2-hour battle, 4 federal agents were killed and more than a dozen injured. In addition, 6 Branch Davidians were reportedly killed. This would start the infamous 51-day standoff between the ATF, FBI, and the Branch Davidians.
David came down the hallway and he said, I don't want anybody to do anything stupid. I'm going to go talk to them. So don't take any action in your own hands. Let me handle it.
Heard him open the front door, and the next thing I hear him yelling out, hey, wait a minute, there's women and children in here.
I look up and I see Vernon Howell at the door, and I was running straight at him, yelling at him, police, search warrant. He backed up and he shut the door.
And then all these bullets started coming from the outside in.
The minute David got shot, there was people that retaliated.
It seemed like a pop here, a pop there, and then boom, 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 pops everywhere.
All of a sudden, I'm seeing just holes appear in front of me. And at that point, it was like, wake up, stupid, they're shooting at.
You are in a situation where, under the Constitution of the United States, you're free to practice your religion, and the very people that's supposed to defend that are the ones that are attacking you. Who defends you?
By the next morning, the FBI took command and continued negotiations. Within 24 hours, 14 children came out of Mount Carmel, and so had allegations that Koresh had taken multiple wives, some of whom were underage.
Koresh's followers would do just about anything he would ask.
And Koresh refused to come out, as he made clear to negotiators through videos.
Bringing these tanks and stuff around here, I tell you what, no one's going to hurt me or my family.
During the siege, David Koresh engaged in Bible babble in an attempt to stall the operation and justify his cult's existence. As mentioned earlier, David Koresh claimed to have cracked the code of the 7 seals and attempted to write a book and publish it in the last attempt to stall authorities and preserve his teachings with other followers around the world. He would never go to finish his book.
I'm saying that when I get through writing these and they're given to my attorney, and my attorney hands them over, what's the 2 theologians' name? Philip Arnold and Jim Tabor. because you've shown that they have a sincere interest in these things, you see, then I can spend all my time in jail, and people can go in and ask me all the stupid questions, because they're not going to ask me about the SEALs. They're going to say, do you molest young ladies? Have you eaten babies? Do you sacrifice people? Do you make automatic weapons? Do you have bombs? Look, that's what they're going to be interested in. Sensationalism.
That's why you need to get it done before you leave there, then.
That's why I'm going to come.
On March 9th, with temperatures dropping to 20 degrees, the on-scene commander raised the stakes and cut electricity to Mount Carmel. The FBI flooded the building with light and blasted them with sounds like dentist drills, Tibetan chants, and the screaming of rabbits being slaughtered.
And naturally, it stiffened their resistance.
You wonder whether some of these people have any religious convictions, because they would understand how far a true Christian is willing to go for what he believes, if he's deeply committed. What we came to learn under David was that God asks his messengers to do some weird stuff.
So no one's holding you here against your will?
No one would be holding anyone here against it.
With around 80 people still inside Mount Carmel, the FBI decided to force an end to the siege by driving everybody out with military-grade tear gas. On April 19th, on the 51st day of the siege, the tear gassing began.
This is not an assault. We are not entering the building.
April 19th, 1993, just before dawn, over the FBI's loudspeakers.
David, individuals inside the Branch Davidian compound. We are in the process of placing tear gas into the building.
The feds are out of patience and ready to make arrests for the murder of the 4 ATF agents 51 days earlier.
Exit the compound now. Submit to the proper authority, David.
The tear gas is inserted from booms on specially modified tanks and fired from grenade-like canisters.
And deposited nearly 400 canisters of tear gas inside the building.
You are under arrest. This standoff is over.
When the Davidians shoot at the tanks, the FBI intensifies the gas.
Believe me, it will not get any better. It will only get worse.
After 2 hours, the FBI begins ripping holes in the building. Exit routes, they say.
And you go, if we step out of this hole, they're going to shoot us? Are they so angry because ATF agents are dead, or because we've made them wait so long?
David, you have had your 15 minutes of fame. It's time to leave the building.
An hour later, there's smoke and fire.
We can work through this. Don't lose control of this, David. Don't lose control of this.
Flying above the complex, an infrared camera records the fire as a bright plume.
David, don't do this to your people.
Within minutes, there's a second fire. Then a third.
This is not the way to end this. Lead your people out, David. Be a Messiah, not a destroyer.
It's just a very bad scenario here at this point.
Winds fanned the flames and reduced the entire property to ash within an hour. Around 80 Branch Davidians died, including David Koresh and 25 children. While most died from fire and smoke inhalation, 2 members were found with fatal bullet wounds to the head. Several months later, a federal grand jury indicted 12 of the surviving Branch Davidians for unlawful possession of firearms and aiding the murder of federal officers. Many believe the government's actions were overly aggressive and maybe even illegal. The raid drew sharp public criticism, and controversy swirled over whether or not federal agents started the fire and shot the Branch Davidians. Right-wing extremist groups and patriot militias, Waco was further evidence of a government willing to use its power against its own people. One of these extremists was a 24-year-old disgruntled Army veteran named Timothy McVeigh. Radicalized by Waco, McVeigh would retaliate for what he saw as the injustices of the Waco siege by bombing a federal building in Oklahoma City, exactly 2 years to the day of the siege.
About a third of the building has been blown away.
It is apparently the single deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil ever.
It looked pretty brutal. On the far right in this country, Waco was the convincing last straw that the government had in fact become a murderous tyranny.
My reaction to Waco was horror. It was the defining moment, I think, of the late 20th century in terms of the relationship between the citizen and the government.
Vanderboe saw Waco as part of a long-standing pattern of federal aggression, particularly when it came to guns. Most notoriously, an arrest gone wrong at Ruby Ridge, Idaho. There was also an assault weapons ban on the horizon.
Guns were seen as the instrument which guaranteed the freedom of liberty-loving Americans.
Waco proved to us that citizen disarmament was coming. It scared the crap out of us, and it mobilized us.
After Waco, reports showed militias rising up. By 1995, there were almost 450 of them spread across the country.
This is the Michigan Militia, a self-proclaimed fighting force of ordinary citizens preparing to defend themselves against the federal government.
Do we serve the government, or does the government serve us?